Greetings, stranger. Sorry to disturb you, but I thought you should know that we'll be making port at Willowside in about an hour. As you can probably tell from the clawing raindrops against the cabin window, we have sailed headfirst into one of this section of coastline's infamous storms. The captain was grumbling to me earlier about unseasonal weather, but can it really be called unseasonal if it occurs all year round here? A question for the philosophers, perhaps. In the meantime, I would like to tell you about one of Galarian's most mysterious and malevolent creatures. There is nothing like inspiring fear of faraway places to calm thoughts on current predicaments, after all. Unlike ghosts, whose errant souls I discussed in Otari, and who can haunt anywhere significant to the spirit, the specimen I have in mind today is only found in extreme environments. I promise you that there is almost certainly nothing of its like here in the Starstone Isles, as even the deepest recesses of the Kortos Mounts are well charted and keenly watched. But the same cannot be said of the mountains and tundras in the farthest north, or the deserts of deepest Assyrian. Dare to stray too far from civilization there, and you might find yourself trespassing on the territory of a Wendigo, a creature about which we remain so ignorant that even our name for it translates roughly to mean little more than monster. They have claimed the minds and bodies of many doomed explorers in this world's history, and even those they merely choose to slay are lucky to find a quick death. Scholars of Wendigo lore are few and far between. If you encounter one, it is only because it allows you to witness it, and seldom is the time when this is done amicably. The mutterings of elderly villagers and the ravings of psychotic hunters are the closest most of us will ever come to seeing a Wendigo, and consequently, writings on their form and function that have trickled their way into the Forai Logos in Absalom and other repositories of knowledge have proven to be dubious at best. It is therefore quite lucky that you have me, for I have dealt with the fallout from Wendigo psychosis more times than you would believe, and my relationship with these monsters has grown much in experience and wisdom in the years since. So pay close attention, and maybe one day, should you and your companions find yourselves stalked in some forgotten forest in the realm of the Mammoth Lords or Assyrian desert temple, may this information prove to be the difference between life and death for all concerned. Wendigos are as varied in appearance as they are unknown in origin, but that does not mean we can say nothing about them. For now, I will only speak of the most common specimens that dwell in the coldest, harshest regions of Galarian, but always keep in mind that variations have been documented in deserts, abandoned mines, and even in the space between spaces beyond this planet, in the unforgiving inky blackness we call the Dark Tapestry. Most often, a Wendigo takes the form of a humanoid beast hybrid that resembles a hideous amalgamation of man and native fauna. In my experience, the represented animal is commonly a moose or feral elk, equipping the monster with antlers and a camouflaging, shaggy white fur. Its limbs by themselves would betray the Wendigo as more than a simple humanoid, though, for its arms are always disproportionately long for its body and end in vicious, bloody claws, while its legs seem to taper to charred, blackened stumps where feet or hooves should be. However, the Wendigo does not walk on its stumps, but rather glides through the air, suspended by its supernatural magic, although it will often mimic running motions while it does so for reasons that are not entirely clear. This propulsion renders it 4 times faster than an average humanoid, and makes escape from a Wendigo a futile endeavor, even before accounting for verticality and the difficult terrain typical of one's environment. Furthermore, an average Wendigo outclasses its prey by every common metric. Not only is it faster, but it is also stronger, hardier, and vastly more intelligent. It would not be a mistake to compare Wendigo's natural fortitude to that of the Krakens, except in time, for unlike the century of maturation demanded of the sea devils, a Wendigo is created fully grown in a reproductive ritual that claims the lives of at least 2 unfortunate souls. We will return to this creation ritual momentarily, But we still have many more powers to document. Firstly, Wendigos are telepathic within about a mile of themselves, and have no qualms about taunting their victims with words and howls in a surprising diversity of languages that only its chosen can hear. Just as you cannot shut another's mouth with thought alone, your mind cannot shut out the invasion of screams and cries that pierce it through telepathy, unless it is shielded against divination magic, of course. This can have a disorienting and even deafening effect on groups. It is hard to coordinate effectively when primordial horrors are being wailed into your mental ears without end. Wendigos can also track others through their body heat, which their eyes detect as readily as we do reflections off mirrors. In the bitter cold of their haunts, this makes hiding from one a tortuous dilemma. I do note that even though this heat sight is also a divinationary ability, meaning some sort of anti-magic field will block it, that will achieve little more than creating an obvious dead zone to a Wendigo's eyes and drawing its curiosity even faster. Like Krakens, Wendigos are also able to command the weather, although not as instantaneously or sympathetically. Rather, from their lairs and dwelling places, they can summon blizzards about themselves and lower the temperatures to levels rarely felt even in Arctic tundras. Indeed, a snap freeze or spontaneous blizzard are two of the most typical indicators that one is prowling the area. Be warned not to rely too heavily on these phenomena, however. Remember their cunning intelligence. A Wendigo can stifle the weather just as readily if it believes this will afford it some advantage. These creatures are also capable of turning themselves into wind, seemingly melding into thin air as readily as you or I might disappear into a large crowd. Such a power is normally used defensively, for Wendigos are harmless so long as they are wind-walking, but you would be wise not to dismiss it as a secondary concern. Occasionally, when a Wendigo is not only hunting, but also seeking to spawn more of its kind, it can try to coerce a target into transforming alongside it, dragging them along for a devastating jaunt through its chaotic mind and harsh environment. Hiding in shadows may be able to protect you from unseasonal weather and its grasping claws, but even the thickest of walls cannot keep out the nightmares that Wendigos can inject into victims' dreams. These haunting visions deny any benefit from rest and respite during an unforgiving expedition into a Wendigo's domain. Moreover, unlike the nightmares some spellcasting pranksters are able to inflict onto others, Wendigo nightmares also accompany the risk of being infected with the deadly malaise known as Wendigo torment or Wendigo psychosis. More than the claws and the fangs and the cold and the howls, Wendigo torment is the true cause of wise hunters' fear of these monsters, because it has the power to turn any affected into a cannibalistic husk. This circles us back to the secret of Wendigo's reproduction, or creation perhaps, depending on your point of view. You see, the creatures are not natural beings, leastways not as most of us understand the use of the term. On the other hand, they are not entirely supernatural either, in the sense of being above or beyond the material plane somehow. Ghosts, for example, are connected at all times to the river of souls which they rejected, and are more or less defined by the paradox and torture of their separation from its current. Their presence on the material plane is a problem that must be solved. In contrast, Wendigos are rather connected to the lands they stalk. They are primordial beings and seem to have emerged here directly. Some scholars do reject this and assert rather outlandish claims of origin from unknowable realities, or sometimes the outer plane called Nirvana, whose petitioners, the Agathians, resemble humanoid animal hybrids similar to Wendigos. However, I think all of these claims are either completely baseless or, in the latter case, drawing on superficial parallels that ignore myriad counterexamples. No, Wendigos are, to me, proof that the material plane is more than capable of holding its own against the inner and outer spheres when it comes to powerful, native forces. A Wendigo is thus created at the expense of two others, a humanoid afflicted with Wendigo torment, and an arbitrary bystander whom the first slays in the final stages of their transformation. Once cursed with this psychosis, a victim immediately falls into a diminished, confused state. Physically, they remain themselves, but mentally, their thoughts are muddied and slowed, and their capacity to reason or even experience the world around them is diminished as a rolling fog fills their minds. Depending on the victim's willpower, this intense stupefaction can last for many days, but usually it only takes 2 before they seem to make a miraculous recovery. To an outside observer, the fog lifts, and the victim can reason and speak clearly once more. Yet the truth is far more sinister. During this final stage of Wendigo torment, a victim is compelled by only a singular, overwhelming focus: to cannibalize another member of their own ancestry. They will show no hesitation and no mercy to the first person they encounter who meets this straightforward criterion, though they may plan their murder carefully if they retain the capacity to do so. The exact modus operandi varies from person to person, but the end result does not. Once killed, the secondary victim's true purpose is served through their consumption by their now doomed killer, raw and crazed. After this gruesome last meal is finished, the victim enters a very brief period of demented regret, crying and gibbering about their actions to themselves and to anyone who will listen. This only lasts for about 5 minutes before the person is dead and a new Wendigo is born. They run outside into the sky at such speeds that their feet catch fire and burn away, leaving behind the telltale, charred stumps of the creature. Simultaneously, the body grows in size and disfigures itself, adopting the animalistic characteristics suitable for its environment as the Wendigo spirit takes hold. The only comfort at the end of this macabre ordeal is the knowledge that the victims' souls are both free from further torment. Only their bodies were used to prepare the new Wendigo's arrival. How is someone exposed to Wendigo torment, then? Well, there are 3 ways: to be haunted by a Wendigo's nightmare, to be transformed into wind and made to ride it alongside a Wendigo, or, very occasionally, to engage voluntarily in an act of cannibalism. This final method, which does not need to involve a Wendigo at all, hints at their true nature, I think. These monsters thrive on hunger and depravity uniting in common purpose, particularly when precipitated by the extreme environments they inhabit. Permanent settlements may brush against a Wendigo's territory, but they rarely overlap it significantly. Instead, people who delve into the uncharted reaches of ice or sand or rock also unwittingly enter the regions of Galarian most popular with these creatures, and they revel in their isolation. The silver lining to all of this is that you are unlikely to encounter one unless you specifically go looking. If you choose to do so, then I suggest you keep in mind the words recounted to me once by an old adventurer, who advised me that you can always tell when a Wendigo is nearby, because you can smell the unique mixture of blood and loneliness that they exude. I am not sure if smelling loneliness is a reliable way of determining your proximity to a specimen, but it is still useful to recall these nouns as the 2 things closest to Wendigo's hearts. Their insatiable hunger drives them to kill almost every animal they can find, and in fact they are susceptible to starvation if they lack food for sufficiently long periods. It does not matter how many meals one consumes, though, for a Wendigo is always ravenous. Their loneliness, meanwhile, extends even to interacting with other members of their kind. In general, Wendigos reject all other sapient life and do not tolerate it to enter their territory unless it is to be hunted, events which they always extend into protracted, psychologically draining affairs that can last for weeks. They can make temporary exceptions for newly created kin, who instinctively leave their progenitor's territory to claim their own hunting grounds, on pain of violent death should they ever return. Indeed, the more powerful another creature, the more hostile a Wendigo seems to be towards it, and many meet their ends battling dragons, giants and other forces that stand a chance of overcoming them. Some humanoid cultures worship Wendigos as nature spirits or even demigods, but despite being intelligent enough to make use of this reverence, my experience has informed me that most ignore this as beneath them, unless the cult becomes sufficiently powerful to challenge its environmental supremacy. I would like finally to stress once more that the supreme cold of the far north is hardly the only place one could expect to encounter a Wendigo. Some manifest themselves in the blistering heat of desert sands, wherein they are known as dust Wendigos and take the form of jackal-headed beasts, while others seek out labyrinths and underground tunnel networks where travelers may easily lose their way. These so-called bucker Wendigos are the strongest of their kind, and have the ability to burrow through rock as easily as the others flit through the skies. Void Wendigos are the most unusual, being located in hard-to-imagine spaces between the stars in the sky, and they drift in statue silence for eons until they encounter some deeply unfortunate soul to whom they can spread their howling madness. In essence, anywhere on the material plane where you are susceptible to isolation and starvation, anywhere seemingly without reprieve or end, and anywhere whose entrances are endless but exits few, are places capable of spawning Wendigos. Never underestimate them, and above all else, never believe that someone has made a full recovery from their tormenting curse until you observe their interactions with their kin for a while. Well, stranger, that ends my tale of the Wendigos. There is still plenty that we do not know about their origins and motivations. Most obviously, why would a creature defined by its isolation ever desire to make more of its kind? And how did the first one manifest? But I am not omniscient, and can only hope that we might answer these questions in our thirst for knowledge and lore sometime in the future. In the meantime, I believe the cook has prepared a hearty meal for us while we ride out the rest of this storm into port. Come join me on the pier once we're moored in Willowside, and I will give you a tour of the town and some information on the infamous Dunmire bog that is creeping up on it. It will have to be something of a flying visit, given that our ship will depart for Escadar soon afterwards, but I think it will be enough to give you good insight into the realities of the Isle of Kortos' most anarchic locale. Well, until then.